In terms of perspective and the abundance versus scarcity, I think something that I've been really thinking about a lot is like when people say, well, this industry is so hard, this industry is so tough. Yes, but someone's gonna book the job. Someone has to. Like, it's going to happen. So why not you? Like, why not me? Why not?
You are Eric Klingwald, and this is the Unseen Word.
Our guest today is Cece Kelly. Cece is a truly special human. Her heart is as big as her talent, and Cece can be seen in the project Family Camp, which is a super cute movie, family-friendly movie. She also is going to be in a new project with Jennifer Gardner that's going to be coming out, and they've done a variety of projects over the years. But Cece, one of the most special components to Cece is that she is someone who is constantly figuring out how to better herself as an actor. As a coach who's worked with thousands of actors over the years, I would be hard-pressed to find someone who truly has the dedication at the level that Cece does. And so it's going to be really fun to share her journey with everyone, just get some insight into what it's about in terms of really going for this and giving it everything that you can to be the best actor that you can be. So I hope you enjoy it and have fun. It's such a cool thing to have a student who I have such a strong connection with. You know, like it's kind of interesting because there's a lot of actors who I've worked with a lot over the years. And actually for us, while we've worked together a lot, we've had long periods of time where we didn't work together, you know? And you were living in LA for a while, right?
Yeah, like I would go out there for pilot and episodic season.
Okay. And how long would you usually stay out there, ballpark?
Like 2 months.
Okay.
Yeah.
What do you think about LA versus Atlanta?
I think that the community of actors is definitely growing in Atlanta, but I do think that's something that is lacking. I mean, like, in LA, you can find an acting class wherever you live, so I think it's very easy to surround yourself with creatives, but I know that a lot of Atlanta casting directors, like, are about their Atlanta locals. I don't know. I think I was just kind of, like, here when it was happening, and I haven't been in LA the same amount of time that I've been in Atlanta to really see a mega difference or to even know what to spot versus that it's easier for me to get plugged in whenever I go to LA.
Right. Well, it's a market that's been growing for over 100 years. Literally. Right. I mean, I think the studio started in the 20s or so. It was around there. So it's been about literally a century.
Yeah.
Whereas Atlanta, obviously there was a film market here prior to the tax incentives. There was a show called In the Heat of the Night, which was, I think, in the 70s maybe, 80s, which was a really popular show. But the tax incentive kicked in 2008. And it didn't really get rocking and rolling until like 2012. And obviously The Walking Dead, Pinewood, Vampire Diaries, a lot of the CW shows started going, Tyler Perry.
Yeah.
All those components. But really, I mean, a decade, a little over a decade. So LA's been around 10 times, well, not LA, but Hollywood.
Yeah.
The industry there has been around 10 times longer. And it's fascinating, though, because while I totally agree, in terms of creatives, in terms of individuals who are driven, who have a great work ethic, who are really pursuing this, there's way more people in LA. Right? But again, it's because the industry's been there for so long. So I feel like while on a training front or an actor's front, like on that end, Atlanta's nowhere close to LA currently, right? Just in terms
Right.
of the number of people doing it, and then of course if there's a huge demand for if there's a ton of actors, huge supply, then there's a higher demand for great acting coaches and great acting programs, right? But where Georgia has the upper hand is the production. I mean, we're annihilating
Yeah.
California in terms of production.
Yeah.
In terms of production dollars spent, the number of new productions, and so I think what we're going to start to see, and we started to see it before the pandemic, and so that's another tricky thing, right? It's sort of like it's like being a young athlete, right? And then you get an injury right when you're starting to get momentum, and that's kind of what happened with the industry here. So I do think it's going to pick up, and what you said I think is really important though too is the community component. While there isn't as much of a community in terms of quantity, I think the quality of the community here is better. And what I mean by that is there's more support for one another.
Yeah, I could see what you're saying with that. I think, though, something that when I think about LA and Atlanta, I think if you are an adult actor, especially if you have a family, it makes so much sense to be in Georgia. But if you're young, there isn't a... Not that there isn't a ton to do in Atlanta, but in terms of in LA, if the beach is your thing, awesome. If hiking is your... I guess Atlanta, Georgia has a lot of good hiking.
A lot of good hiking.
But in terms of being able to... I don't know. I find like in Georgia, if you're not maybe 21, you're not going to have a lot to do in Atlanta as far as nightlife versus in LA, you might be able to, I don't know, like kind of just run around, which is something that I don't know if that makes sense. But really, when I look at like even friends who I have that have filmed in Atlanta for several months from LA are like, yeah, we just kind of all hung out with each other because there wasn't a ton to do. I mean, like we went to the aquarium one day. That was cool. And then we went to the World of Coke and that was cool. And the parks and hiking, but not a lot of like young recreational stuff.
Yeah.
In terms of living.
Right.
And being plugged in.
Well, I think, again, it's just there's a much greater number of young people that will go out to LA to pursue acting.
Yeah.
So you just have more people doing it. Now, what I would argue, though, to your point is, I don't know how many of those extracurricular activities are going to really be beneficial to you as an individual. It might be more fun, right? But yeah, I think it's an interesting dynamic. But the LA versus Atlanta market. But I do believe if you are an actor who is really driven, while it's beneficial to have, I think, rep in LA for sure. LA, New York. I mean, I think it's great to have rep all over the country. I do think there's something about this market because it is at this sort of early stages, right? It's still at this kind of infancy stage.
Yeah.
Right? So while it may be a little bit more confusing, it's not quite as cohesive because it's still kind of being created. It's also at this sort of fresh beginning. And so while you may not be able to find as many tribes to become a part of, if you start a tribe here, it has the potential to grow into something amazing. Whereas in LA, it's so saturated. It's just so saturated with everything.
Yeah.
And I think there's something about this city and Georgia as a state in terms of it growing economically and just in terms of culturally, the art scene here, the music scene here is growing. And so, yeah, I mean, I think it is different, but for me at least, and obviously I'm biased having a studio here and living here, but I did live in LA for about a decade and I grew up in California, so I know what it's like there. And I think there's just something about this place that is really special. And because that production component is here, it's huge. You know what I mean?
And I will say, to the point of supporting each other, I think maybe because being here, there isn't, at least that I found, like a ton of yeah, it's not as oversaturated as LA, where I'm going to go into a casting office and see all these other people that look exactly like me. And here, with my friends who are actors, it really is like like, your success is my success. And yeah, if it's not me, I hope it's you, because I know how hardworking you are, I know how talented you are. Versus maybe the mindset of, like, I didn't move to Georgia for acting, but if someone, not me, but if someone is moving to LA for acting and you're like, I have to pay my bills and I can't fail and all this stuff, you might have more of the mindset of, it might be harder to feel like, oh yeah, like, that's amazing for you, type thing.
Right. Well, because it's the way I see that, it's a scarcity mindset versus abundance mindset.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so it's like, if I go into this situation saying there's only enough for X number of individuals, well, then I better do everything I can to get my piece before you do.
Yeah.
You know? And so I think, again, this comes a lot into perspective, right? Which is obviously something I'm a big proponent of.
Yeah.
You know, having a perspective that is conducive to living the life you want to live, right? So I can go into any situation from a scarcity or abundance mindset. I think it's easier here to see things abundantly because there isn't such a rat race. It's not such a dog-eat-dog kind of mentality.
There's a lot of life that's being lived that isn't a part of the industry.
Yeah, that's a big part of it too. But yeah, you know, I mean, we'll see what will happen. And obviously, with taped auditions and everything now, it's almost like
it doesn't matter.
Yeah. I mean, it does.
What does help is being local hire.
Yes.
That is something that's huge. But in terms of where you are living currently, it's good to have a lot of friends everywhere. Like, I have a friend in Utah, which that market is growing a lot. Yeah, that's been on the up and up. And even I'm from Alabama, and a lot of things film in Alabama, and now I have friends in Oklahoma. And so, yeah, I think that's important to try to network and grow your community. But in terms of perspective and the abundance versus scarcity, I think something that I've been really thinking about a lot is, like, when people say, well, this industry is so hard, this industry is so tough. Yes, but someone's gonna book the job. Someone has to. Like, it's going to happen. So why not you? Like, why not me? Why not? And I think it's really encouraging when I see young people like Olivia Rodrigo. You know Olivia Rodrigo?
Yeah.
Good. So Olivia Rodrigo, Abigail Barlow, who did the TikTok musical. Like, it happens. We know that it does happen for people. So yeah, I think it's like a really defeating term or defeating mindset to think like, well, it's so hard, you know, what's going to happen? And even the girl that was in West Side Story, like, she was 17. She did high school theater and then just booked that.
Yeah.
So I think that that's something important to keep in mind is, if you have the heart for it, then why not?
Yeah, I think, no, it's true. It's true. Why not me? And yeah, usually it's the opposite for most people. But why would they pick me when there's so many other options out there?
Right.
But I think, you know, I know for me personally, I've had that imposter mindset, which I think goes hand in hand with sort of the pleaser mentality.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, I want to make sure everybody's happy, and simultaneously I'm just kind of duping them all into thinking that I actually have value. You know, and I'll never forget when John D'Aquino said to me, at some point, your experience in your work is going to speak for you. You know, and that's always been something that's stuck with me, where it's like, okay, if I just focus on the work, right? Like, I just saw this video recently. One of my friends sent me on Instagram, and it's this woman talking about, and she's so confident and so much conviction. Your job is not acting. Your job is to show up and smile and get everyone else to smile around you and blah, blah, blah. And I went, ugh. Like, that
Shouldn't be your responsibility.
That is not your job. And it's also like, it's such a gross concept to think like, all I want is everyone to smile around me.
Yeah. That's a lot of Yeah.
And especially when somebody's saying it with such conviction, you know what I mean? And so, but I think a lot of people think that way, right? You know, you'll see certain casting directors tweet something, and all of these little minions are yes, yes, oh, such brilliance.
Yeah.
I'll follow you wherever you want me
Yeah.
to, right? And it's sort of
Yeah.
like, it's just kind of like, why don't you just... You know, it's like whenever an actor comes in, they're like, "What should I do this? What I'm thinking, if I wear this," and I go, "Let's just, let's be really good. Let's just be really good and
Yeah.
do really good work."
I get into that little trouble sometimes because I also know how much look matters for booking roles at the same time. So I want to be, do the best work I can. But I also know that, like, from a lot of things that I've booked, if I look like, oh, you're a girl, then I don't know. Then sometimes it's easier to be plugged into that world. But yeah, I mean, the wanting to... Denzel talks a lot about what it's like to lead a set and how you set the tone for everyone. And that's so true. I can remember being on a set where these two female leads, I was 15, and one of them, she was very seasoned and reputable, and I saw her and she went around to every single person, introduced herself and asked for their name. Every single person, any PA that she saw.
Okay.
And she's the lead of the movie. And I remember just seeing that, and it kind of clicked in my head of oh, we're all a team. Oh yeah, I think it's so weird. Why would I not want to know about your name or your family when you're miking me up? Setting a tone is important, but also knowing that it's do your work and you're good. Be kind, be polite, be respectful, but don't feel like you have to keep the ship going.
Yeah, I think setting a tone is such... So when I think of setting a tone, I also think of your state of mind. So Tony Robbins talks a lot about your state creates your reality. And you can shift your state through your focus or physiology, right? So if I'm in my mind thinking, okay, I'm grateful to be here, I'm appreciative, I'm ready, blah, 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 right? So I have all of this in my mind. I'm shifting my focus. But then another thing I can do is I can just get my body moving. I can get my juices flowing so I'm not sort of in this apathetic state.
Yeah.
But you mentioned Denzel, and I love Denzel.
Yeah.
And that's a great example, though, of somebody who does the work. You know, he can set that tone because he walks the walk. Right? I don't think there's anybody in this industry that would... And first of all, I love that we're just saying Denzel. That's also how you know someone who's established himself.
Yeah.
Right? We didn't have to say Denzel Washington.
Yeah.
Denzel, because he has established himself as this sort of, he's at a bar of his own. Denzel is somebody who has really established a level of work ethic that is as high as it gets, right? As deep as it gets. And so I think it's a lot easier to set the tone when you know you've done your work.
Yeah.
Right? It's a lot more challenging to create this sort of vibe or this energy when you yourself are kind of hollow inside, or what you're doing is not authentic.
Yeah, and I'm sure Denzel also, he's done the work, and he's just so prepared.
Right.
Always. I can't think of his name right now, but the main actor from Get Out. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I do.
Well, he, I believe, is theater trained, classically trained, and was talking about how he reads the script. Oh my gosh, it was so many times.
Yeah.
He was like, because I want to know exactly what's going on at all times, even if it's not my scene. I want to know exactly so I can have my thoughts on it, where I am emotionally in my arc, but also just be so well informed that I'm never thrown off. And I just thought that was so interesting. He's even the stuff that I'm not in.
Yeah.
So you really are so informed that you feel like you are a part of the process. You're in the set, you know what's going on, so that and you've talked about this too, about how important it is to be prepared going to the audition room. I remember we did something, an exercise one time, and like if you have your script in your right hand and then someone goes to shake your hand, and even a little thing like, oh, hi,
Right.
little things
Yeah.
that throw you off, and how to combat that and mentally recover.
Yeah. Well, if you're prepared, everything's easier, right? Now, I will be the first to tell you preparation has always been a challenge for me because I've been able to wing it.
Yeah.
And so if
Yeah.
you're a really good talker and you can kind of read the room and you've got an energy or a charisma about you, it's a little easier to kind of maneuver around the preparation, but it eventually catches up. And I realized then at one point, I was like, okay, I got to put in the work. I've got to put in the time. And it wasn't really until I got into my 30s where I would say I really started to hone my work ethic. I was always interested in creating, and if I had an idea, I would run with that idea, right? But I always loved this sort of visionary creative component. But the thing is, while being an artist is great, you've also got to be a technician. Right, there's I was listening to a guy talk about Stephen Pressfield, I think is his name, and he wrote a book called the War of Art, I think is what it is, and he talked about how one of the biggest things as a writer is just non-negotiable sitting down in front of your computer for X amount of time, no matter what, every single day. Or whatever it is. If I've dedicated these 3 hours, I'm going to sit here. And if I get 1 page, I get 1 page. If I get 50 pages, I get 50 pages. But it's not about how much I'm writing, but it's about the consistency of doing it. Right? Because that's half the battle. Right? So like last year when I was doing all of that running, it was just committing to running, no matter what. I was going to get at least 10 miles a week, which is not that much, right? If you ran 5 days a week, it's 2 miles a day. It's not that much.
Yeah.
But it's doing it for 52 weeks straight, no matter what. I did not miss 1 week. So for 52 weeks straight, all of last year, I ran at least 10 miles, which also included a 35-mile trail run, which was the gnarliest thing I've ever done in my life in Utah, speaking of Utah. And so... But it was just that commitment where it was non-negotiable. Yeah. And so there were days where I was so sore, or at one point I was having a thing like with my quad, and I literally couldn't run. I couldn't get the miles. So I just said, okay, well, I've committed to running, though. I'm not going to walk it. So I was like, how far can I run? So I would run a quarter mile, and then I couldn't run anymore, and I would stop. I would take 5 minutes to recover. I would run a quarter mile. And I did that for I think it was 2.5 miles. So 10 segments of that. So it was obviously the worst time I'd ever recorded running, but it didn't matter because I got it done.
Yeah, there's something so accomplishing, and you really do feel so proud of yourself when you do something like that. And I saw this woman, I don't know where it was, but she was speaking at something and was saying, Would you trust someone who always fell through on their promises to you? No, you wouldn't, because they'd be flaky. So how does that change about yourself? If you keep saying, well, I'm going to do this, and then you don't do it, you're probably not going to trust yourself to get things done. And in the same way that you would want someone to do that to you, do it to yourself, of if you say you're going to do it, follow through with it. And that's how you can really learn to trust yourself and know what you're capable of. And I just thought that was so interesting, and it's so true. If you keep saying, I know for me, I'll do that all the time. I'm like, oh well, even simple things like, I'm gonna wake up at 8 tomorrow, and then I don't because I don't have anything. But little things like that, yeah, it does kind of chip away. And then I know whenever I say I'm gonna do something and I do it, I always feel like, I did do that. Even a little thing like, I'm going to wake up at 8.
Yeah, well, because you feel good about accomplishing things. Right? It's sort of like the difficulty of doing something is a lot less than the difficulty of not. So you know what I'm saying, right? So it's like, yes, it's hard to stay fit and it takes exercise and time and effort. Yes, it's challenging to go through a script however many times. I know you were mentioning the guy from Get Out. Anthony Hopkins goes through his scripts about 200 times. He will read it literally hundreds of times, go through it, and then he'll let it sit. And then he'll come back to it, right? That process is a process. We had Will Bowie, you know Will, when he was testing for Bunked, he had all this dialogue, right? And he's this young kid, and he's getting in front of, I think he said there was like 20 executives, and they're doing all these chemistry reads, and he's never done this. So he took that script and he wrote it out over and over and over and over and over. I got to imagine when he was doing it, it wasn't pleasurable. Right? It wasn't fun.
Yeah.
But the challenge of that, I think, is a lot less than the challenge of having to deal with a life where you don't do it. So like, for instance, health, right? Yes, it's hard to stay consistent. Yes, it was really hard some weeks to get even just those 10 miles in. But you know what's a lot harder is having to tell my kids that I've got this heart disease, or that I've got this problem, or even just getting by every day being unhealthy. You know, it's just it's a much more challenging life. It's easy in the short term, but overall it's a lot more challenging. And I think if we were just, as a species, more understanding of that, like, yes, challenges are going to arise, but those challenges, that's where you grow. And when you overcome that challenge, the benefits of that are going to be so much more than the benefits of just not having to deal with some hardships.
I wonder what it is in us that really likes procrastination. Like, I wonder what that is, if it's evolutionary, if it's something that it is so, I don't know why we do that. And then we always, not always, but I know for me, whenever I procrastinate, I just feel so much worse. I'm like, oh, it would have been so much easier if I would have just done the thing. But for some reason, even for example, if I have an audition and I'll know, like, I'll just spend 15 minutes on it today. That's all. I have, I'll tape it tomorrow or I'll tape it in a few days, just 15 minutes. I don't know why it doesn't feel sometimes like, yeah, let me just do it. And I think that's a common thing for people. We just don't jump on it, and I don't know why.
Well, I mean, I'm sure that there are neuroscientists and psychologists that would have a much more
take it away.
But let Dr. Lingvall speak.
Yeah.
Want to know where I am a doctor? On any Hyatt reservation I make, because it gave me the option. This is one of these fun things. I guess technically I'm not being totally authentic, but it was like, are you Mr., Mrs., or Doctor? And I was like,
Doctor
Lingvall, come on. And so what's funny is when I check in at any Hyatt hotel now, they'll go, oh, hello, Dr. Lingvall. And I'll go, I have my pipe.
I like the sound of that. They might give you better
I might be,
rooms.
Or they'll be like, oh,
big
you're
deal.
someone we should really listen
That's
to.
the same thing. I've heard that if you're wanting to book hotels or restaurant reservations, you should get someone to call, or you can call for yourself and say, hi, this is Eric Lingvall's executive personal assistant. I'd like to make a reservation for him.
Yeah.
And people are like,
oh, you're special.
Yeah, who is that?
Yeah,
I guess they should get a nice seat.
Yeah. Yeah, who knows? Yeah.
And it's not lying. Well,
it's definitely lying. Yeah, it's 100% lying.
But is it harming anyone?
I don't know if it's harming anyone.
Right.
No. Maybe yourself, because you're sort of creating this facade of who you are and not really owning yourself. But whatever. I'm doing the same with the doctor. Anyways, back to procrastination.
Right.
So procrastination, I think, as a species, we've had to overcome adversity through most of our lives. So I read a book called The Comfort Crisis, which I think everyone should read, by a guy named Michael Easter. And he wrote for I think Outside Magazine, Men's Health. And so really a focus on just health and exercise and things of that nature. But one of the things he talked about in there is up until about 50 to 60 years ago, there was a lot more challenges that people faced. They had to overcome more adversity. Things have just gotten a lot easier in life. So, in turn, we don't have to do as much. And so that circuit in our mind that says, okay, overcome adversity, face the challenge, grow, become better, we are literally destroying that part of our mind, that part of our brain that says, I need to face some adversity, overcome that adversity, face the challenge, grow from the challenge. We don't have to do that anymore. We don't have to get off the couch. If I need to walk anywhere, it's like, ugh, what? We don't have to even go to the store to get food.
Yeah.
We don't have to move. We don't have to do anything. So we've created a society where procrastination fits in beautifully because, well, first of all, I don't need to remember anything because if I need to order it, it'll be here in an hour or a day. So I don't need to plan for things. We've created it where if you want to get a job just sitting on your couch and never moving, you can do that. And so I think we've just created this society where laziness is the bar, right? Good enoughness, mediocrity is sort of the bar. And in turn, procrastination will flourish in that type of environment.
Yeah.
Right? Like, see, you can't procrastinate if you have, like, so for instance, if I am working on a book and I need to get this book, or let's just say my 35-mile, the trail run I did last year, right? So something that I literally did. I couldn't wait until the day before to start running.
Right.
I just couldn't do that. I couldn't because physically it would have destroyed me. The physical exertion, the challenge that I had to physically overcome was the most challenging physical thing I've ever done in my life, hands down. The first day of that event, which is 14 miles up this crazy mountain and just like gnarly terrain, it was brutal. Multiple people that were there were like, I've run 5 marathons this year and this is much more challenging. So it was brutal. But because I had been running that entire year, I had that preparation, right? But so if we create things in our life where we must prepare, where we must put in the time, where we cannot procrastinate, then I think we become better at not procrastinating because we are creating things in our life that force us to not procrastinate.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But but I think that the challenging thing is that as a society, we are so lazy.
Well, and there's so many things that now we have access to that'll make us lazy. Our phones, TV, anything that, I mean, I guess like 70 years ago, if there was something to be done, it was like, well.
Not even 70 years ago, by the way. Even if we were to go back 30 years ago, right? So like when I was a kid, you know, we weren't on cell phones all day. You know, we were out, we were doing things, you know? And I mean, I think work ethic has gotten to a very interesting place where there's a high level of entitlement. And I think a lot of that does have to do with things like a cell phone or whatever it is, right? It's immediate. I need it right now. If it takes more than 2 seconds, it's like people don't appreciate time and energy put into something.
Right. And it's also, there's so many different ways to do that now versus with social media and with the jobs that presents, you don't have to like have hard laborious jobs to be successful or a corporate job to be successful, that a lot of young people can make a lot of money and start a career young by a viral video. They can,
yes. But like Mr. Beast, right? You know who Mr. Beast is? Oh, you don't? I think he's got more YouTube subscribers than anyone.
You watch Mr. Beast?
I listened to a podcast with him.
Okay.
Yeah. And it was really fascinating, right? Because if you had showed me this guy, this YouTube guy, where I was like, oh, yeah, he got lucky with some viral videos. But I bring this up because he is someone who, after listening to that podcast, I absolutely admired this guy. Because, yes, he had these videos that went viral, but it didn't just happen. Now, you might have one viral video, just like you might have one booking in a movie or a TV show, but that doesn't mean anything, right? I mean, if you want to have a career, if you want to have longevity, if you want to have something that's more than just a little moment, then I think you have to have a work ethic, even if it is with something like, a YouTube channel or whatever. But when I learned about his work ethic and how much time and energy he had put into studying YouTube and the algorithms and what videos worked, and he would look at everything from like the titles to the length to the colored tones of him and some of his buddies literally every single day would get on to YouTube and research it. And see, a lot of people probably don't know that. They look at this guy and they're like, who is this guy? He kind of looks like this sort of, I don't know, he looks like a like a college dropout kind of guy, who just is who sleeps in till whatever. But he's not. He just found something he was passionate about at a young age. And
I watched I don't know what it was, but it was like a TikToker talking about her schedule for the day. And I was really impressed, because even if it is things like learning a TikTok dance that I'm sure for other people would be like, oh yeah, I'm sure that was hard. But in terms of work ethic of her being like, so I get up, I vlog what I'm making for breakfast, then I have to do this, then I take Zoom meeting, and then I have to learn a TikTok dance, which also that's not that easy, learning any dance. I've never learned a TikTok dance, but you can imagine learning a dance that, learning it, taping it, editing it, doing it. Then has to do other stuff. Now she has to post on her Instagram story. Now she has to then goes photography session, and then learns another dance, post it. And that's a long
absolutely
day.
Look, and the thing is, I think for people that aren't younger, older people,
the other ones,
the other ones, they wouldn't look at a TikToker and see the value of that, just like they wouldn't look at necessarily a YouTuber or for instance, some of these gamers, right, who are making millions of dollars, right? They wouldn't look at them and say, but it's just a different thing. But see, here's the thing. That girl you're talking about, Mr. Beast, there very few of them, right? So even though there are different types of opportunities there, I think the problem is a lot of people are looking at people like them and they're vicariously living through them and then doing a little bit of it, but they're spending the vast majority of their time watching others live and not living themselves.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's a lot easier to watch people living their own lives now than it is to you yourself really live your life. But so you're someone though too, where, in terms of work ethic, you say, procrastination, sure, we can procrastinate, but you have put in a lot of work in terms of acting, right? So we met when you were, I think, 11 or 12?
Yeah, 12.
Yeah, and I remember, we'd worked together a little bit, but then we shot those 2 scenes.
Yes, that are still on my Actors Access. That
amazing. Are they really?
They are. And my friend was like, no one is using those to submit. You need to take those down.
I disagree, because here's what I would say.
Okay.
I think there's something fun about it, right? Because I actually had a client recently where she was like, I have this video from a long time ago. It was this scene, but it was really cute. It was this commercial. And I was like, look, that's obviously not you now. It's not you're not leading with it, but there's something about it, right? Because for me, if I look at either of those scenes, I think they're kick-ass scenes. I thought they were both really good. And B, it says, man, this girl, this young woman, this adult.
Thank you.
Yep. You're welcome.
One of those.
Yep. Has been doing this for quite some time. And she's been delivering quality work since she was a kid. I think there's something to be said about that, And so obviously they're not using it to currently pitch you. But if somebody decides to go all the way through your media on your Actors Access and they come across that video, I don't know. To me, it's like, I don't think it takes away any value. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I see what you're saying.
But in terms of that, even at that young age, now I don't know what your work ethic was at that age, but do you feel like is for you, as someone who I look at as you would be a good role model for any young girls or young actors in general getting into this, because you've had ups and downs with it, right? There have been times where I know for you it's been really challenging. There's obviously been some really cool highs with it. You've played in the LA market and this market. You've done it as a kid. Now you're an adult. And so you've gone through this journey. Do you feel like there was something different about you early on that sort of was instilled in your mind, whether it was through your environment or just something that you kind of had, that allowed you to separate yourself a little bit from the pack, per se? Like in terms of what you did? Because, well, did you notice at a young age that maybe you were doing something different than let's say, other kids trying to get into acting or whatever?
Yeah, I think I thought the stuff I did was normal. I just loved it so much that I just wanted to be doing it. Like if other kids wanted to go, I played sports when I was younger, but if other kids just like loved soccer and they want to go play soccer with their parents, like I loved acting. That I remember I started acting when I was 9, just like doing theater and just watching TV and being like, I want to do that. And getting on my mom's iPad and looking up monologues for kids. And just like, I remember there was this Alice in Wonderland one, and I would just go up in my room and I would memorize it, and I'd like draw a little dot on the wall, and I'd look at it and I'd do it because I loved it. And I still to this day, I would just make up little scene scenarios. Like I was like sitting at my little desk chair and then be like, what'd you say? And then I just like go into a scene and just improv with the wall because I loved it. And I think I don't know where this came from, but I don't know if it was delusional confidence. I'll take it. But this thing of just like this fire of, I know it's going to happen. I know it's going to work out. That no matter what was happening, I know it's going to happen. I know it's going to happen. I felt that when I was a kid. I still feel it. Sometimes it's harder to feel it. Sometimes I'll have to remind myself, especially when even like, gosh, every year that passes, even though I'm still so young, it feels like, yeah, time's running out. And it's not. I have to remind myself it's not. But I had that, and I think that then really carried me through. Is just the love of it. Also, my parents didn't have any stake in the game. I don't know if that, I think that definitely would have impacted the situation. My parents did not care if I acted or not. I brought it up to them and was like, I want to do this. And looking back now, thinking like, man, that really was not normal for my parents to be like, okay, cool. As I'm growing up in Birmingham, Alabama, and I'm like, I want to be on TV. And they're like, cool. Oh, we'll support you wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
But never pushed me. Never anything like that. That I know a lot of kids, their parents either get so excited about it that they want to be super involved, or maybe are living vicariously through them, which I'm sure as an acting coach you see all of the time. Yeah, I think I just had a really great support system. And if I ever were to be like, this isn't fun, I think that my parents would have talked to me about it, right? Because they were not just going to be like, quit, whatever. But yeah, even still to this day, I think if I really talked to them, they would understand. I wouldn't want to quit, even if I felt like it got really hard, because I think a lot about everything that they've done for me and all of the drives to auditions, the money spent on headshots and classes, all of the work that they've put in, that anytime something I do, if I book something and it comes out, I get so excited that they get to see it, because it's just like a little reminder, I hope, of like, it's worth it. It's going to be worth it. Like, it's all going to be worth it.
Mm-hmm.
And that makes me feel, I know they're always proud of me, but them getting to see what I'm doing makes me feel like that's not for nothing. Like, I promise it's not for nothing.
Well, that's one of the biggest reasons why I'm doing this podcast, because I get to see all of the work, right? And I feel like it's a travesty that all of this work that happens in this room, literally in this room with you and
Yeah.
I, just the other day in this room.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's a great example, right? So we do this audition, right? That there was a lot of grinding away and, having to overcome and the mind game and the, and okay, well, this or that, I don't know. And we're going through this process, right? And it's taking a lot of time and energy and effort, and we're pushing and pulling, and it was an emotional audition, and all of these components, right? And then with your agency, you get some really awesome feedback,
Yeah.
which is not common, right? I would say
Yeah.
just in general with agencies, not
Yeah.
with any particular agency. And I think the reason being is that, if you're an agent, you don't want to always tell your client, oh, this is so good, because you want to save that for those times where it really is. But then to get to see that, right? Your agency, which is a very reputable agency, A3, when they give you feedback like that, I know, because I've worked with a lot of agencies, that when they give you that feedback, they mean it. This is not to make you feel good. It's to let you know, hey, you're doing good work.
Yeah.
And I don't think you could have had a better response from your agent, right?
Yeah.
So we know it's good. We feel good, right? As good as we can, being
Right,
hypercritical.
right.
Your agent, who is hypercritical, who is at the top of their game, they're talking about how great it is.
Yeah.
But then the thing is, more often than not, that's where it stops.
No, and that's something that's so interesting. When you do theater, you get that immediate validation of even hearing people laugh in the audience or things like that. But at the end, you get to take it in. You did this great work, and you get to take your bow with everyone you did it with. And yeah, I think something that's so interesting about our industry is you'll work so hard, and maybe casting watches it. Hopefully they watch it, right? I'll say they watch it, and that's sometimes it. And all of this time that you spent investing and working, and I do think that it does help you grow in the long run. It's not like that was for nothing. But yeah, the work ethic is interesting. I mean, acting as a whole, you can sometimes do a really huge project and then you don't book anything for a really long time. Or you just do little things and then you book a huge thing. You never know that it's not like my dad's an accountant, and, you start off where great, I know that if I start off here, I'm going to work my way up. And that's just how it goes. And you can have confidence in that if you keep producing good work, you will go up. But you don't know for acting. And that's something that my parents, when we were discussing if I would go to school or not, because I ultimately chose not to go to college to pursue acting, that's something that I remember my parents kind of having a difficult time about. It's 4 years, you get a degree, and most likely, hopefully, you'll get a job after that. That with acting, what? And that is, I think, the age-old question is, how long do you try to pursue it until maybe it's just not financially reasonable anymore? It is interesting.
Yeah, what's the cutoff?
Yeah,
it's almost or are you if you're 75 and you don't have any money anymore and it's hard, you can't pay the bills,
no plan B, you keep chasing your dream.
But see, here's the question though, what's the purpose of living? See, because if instead of saying well, at what point, you can ask yourself, well, what's the purpose of living? Would you rather be purposefully living in your work, doing something you're passionate about, and not know really where it's going to take you? Or would you rather take a route that is more linear and more stable, but you're not loving what you're doing? I don't know. I think it's different for everybody. I know for me, especially now having done what I really love to do and continuing to do what I love to do, I can't fathom living any other way.
Yeah.
And the most important thing to me is not even my work, it's my family. It's the most important thing to me.
Yeah.
But what I love about my work is that I literally have to I have to pull myself away from work sometimes because I love it so much. You know what I mean? And
Yeah,
I
a lot
think
of people can't say that.
right. And so then I think it's like, well, what constitutes making it? Well, I will say this.
That's a good point. That's a very good point.
Yeah, I mean, because you booked a movie, what? Because you're a working actor, what? You know, there's a really fascinating documentary called "The Guy in That Thing That You Saw." It's something like that. So basically, it's
That's
these.
so good.
Yeah, it's like these actors who've made a living, who you'd
Yes.
see their face and go, "Oh, I know you're that guy in that thing that I saw."
Yeah.
But it's fascinating talking or listening to them talk though, because for some of them it's like they're happy whatever, but then for other ones it kind of feels like, for others it kind of feels like they are settled. They've settled for where they are.
And they're happy?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know necessarily, right? But that's another thing, right? That's a person who's making a living as an acting, but they're not happy. Maybe.
Right. No, I'll have to check that out because that's something I was thinking about the other day even. Like, when people say, well, you know, acting is so hard. Right. I mean, if you're looking at, like, the top percentile A-listers, household names, like, sure, that level can be, right, like, just statistically very difficult. But there's so many actors that are working all the time, that have a steady income, and that is their job. And they don't care if you know their face or not. That's their job. That's what they love to do. That, yeah, what is your definition of success
Yeah.
in the industry?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's a whole nother thing, right? Because you could argue if I am doing what I love to do every day, I already am successful.
Yeah.
Right? It's not about a prize at the end. But and you know, I've been preaching that from like the beginning of me teaching, because I think it's something also my mom really instilled in my mind, was sort of this concept of like really enjoying the process and the journey. You know? I mean, my mom, when she was alive, she definitely enjoyed the process and the journey, maybe sometimes too much and in certain ways, but I don't think there's anybody that would look at her life and be like, I feel like she should have just like, you know, done more crazy fun stuff.
Yeah.
She definitely did that. And I think for me, that's where the journey and really that process, because if you think about it, that's where the bulk of your time is spent, right?
Yeah.
And this whole idea of spend 40 hours a week so that you can have 2 days a week and spend the vast majority of your life so then you can retire and then start to take vacations and enjoy life. I just don't think that's I don't think it's a good way of living, you know, and I think it is kind of the norm, right? It's the societal norm, but I don't think it's personally a good way of living. But so you talked about how, you know, at a young age you realized you were passionate about this, right? That you really loved it. So if you think about that 9-year-old kid, and now how old are you?
20.
20.
I just turned 20.
Oh yeah, 20. So now you're 20. So you've been pursuing acting for more of your
Yeah,
life
which is so
than not, right?
weird.
So the
Yeah.
majority of your life you've been acting
Yeah.
in one capacity or another. Where's your passion now versus where it was when you were 9?
I think it has ebbed and flowed. Honestly, I don't think that it's... When I was 9, I still had the same, like, big dreams that I have now. I think now they seem, because my friends are accomplishing things all around me, that it seems like, oh, yeah, like, it, again, going back to my other point, like, it does happen. Versus when I was 9, it was like, oh my gosh, like, I can't wait. That's going to be so exciting. That now it's so exciting, and I'm seeing that it's not only exciting but attainable. And that is very exciting to have that perspective. But for sure, it definitely ebbs and flows. I think also, like, we talked about this, that the older you get, the more you experience with going in and out of your head, and then even finding new acting things. I think that when I was 9, everything was so like, I don't want to easier because I didn't know any different than to be instinctual, or I didn't know any different for someone to look at me and be like, this is what's happening to, you know, your best friend in the scene, and just being like, yeah, okay, I'm with you, like, let's do it, you know what I mean? Versus now, and you're like, yeah, but my best friend and I, we've done that fight, like,
you get very
you know,
like nitpicky with,
yeah,
okay, I'm upset, but how upset am I? Like, am I angry upset? Am I really sad? Am I super sad?
yes,
like, am I crying?
because all of the technique, I think, can, if you're able to look at it like a toolbox, which if you're able, to take your techniques and say, like, this is what's going to work here and this here, that's great. But sometimes I have so much technique. No, from the classes that I've taken.
You do have a lot of, you've been doing this for most of your life.
That it can be overwhelming sometimes.
Sure. Because
then I'm like, okay, I'll look here and I'll think, okay, what if that was actually happening to me? And then I'll be like, wait, no, but I actually want to do it. Like, this happened to our audition the other day. No, I don't want to actually use myself for this. I want to be the character. I want to do that work. And then be like, wait, no, but should I do this? Should I have a secret in this scene? Like, should I have a secret? Should I have a tactic? Like, should I try to do this and this and this? Which is a lot and isn't necessary all the time. And if you can find ways to, sometimes I'll look at a scene if I don't have a lot of time, and I'll be like, okay, great, I don't really have a lot of time, but I know that I don't, in this scene, I want my dad to let me go to this party. And if I just like tack that on, great. Sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes I'm like, I don't have a lot of time, so I'm just going to fully listen. Or things like that. And I think that's just part of figuring it out. And it changes all the time for the audition's sake. Once you are, because that's what's such the hard little nugget of it, is the audition. The
hard little nugget that's all of it.
What your career is.
Yeah.
The hard little thing that's most of your career.
Yeah.
Is that. Because that is so different than when you, oh great, now I have the callbacks where I get to talk to the director. Now I'm on set, where in my audition room I had to be in this dark, cold, damp dungeon, and now I'm on set and I get to do that. And it's so different, and it always changes. And for me, I think it's about just trying not to get overwhelmed, because I try to get it right a lot.
Yeah, it's a fascinating thing where, like, you know, there's no such thing as too much of a good thing. Like, there is too much of a good thing.
Yeah.
There actually is too much of a good thing. And in my opinion, the perfect example, the Cheesecake Factory menu.
Okay. Oh, too much of a good thing?
Yeah.
Right. Too many options. It's so good. How can you...
Thinking of the Cheesecake Factory menu stresses me out.
That is hilarious you say that. I did an audition. Did you tape anyone for this where someone is looking at the Cheesecake Factory menu and someone has to say to them, it's okay, just pick one?
Yeah, because
there's so much.
There's so much.
Okay.
Right? And so I think there is something, right? It's cool because it's like having a toolkit, right? I've got all of these different tools. Mm. But if the toolkit starts to become too much of my focus, and I really go through, like, if you go to it, I would be very curious if the average individual who's got fairly good reading capabilities were to just read through everything on the menu. It was a 5-hour process. Like, literally. So you know you can't do that.
Right.
So you got to skim it anyway.
And then you're like,
nobody's actually looking at everything on the Cheesecake Factory menu. But so my point is the same thing with your toolkit, right? Mm. If you were to sit there and really go, okay, well, this technique, but that technique, or this technique, and I think this is where it's like, okay, you are a technician, right? So those technical components come into play. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I believe that to be a great artist, you must also be a great technician, right? The two kind of go together, right? Yeah. But there is something about letting go.
Yeah.
And just going, all right, I did the work. I've done the work. I'm going to jump in. Right? I'm going to jump in because there's always something you could change or fix or tweak. Always. Right? But there's something also about saying to yourself, I've done the work. I've looked at this. I've assessed it. And now I am letting go and I'm going to dive in. And I think that process in itself is part of of maturing as an actor, right? Figuring out how can I take all of these tools and work with them, not against them, you know?
Yeah. And again, that's why I think that auditioning can get so complex, is because you craft it, which is great, but then it's like you can craft it in so many different ways that then it gets confusing. And I've had people tell me, they're like, whichever choice is the most interesting to you, whichever choice feels like the one that you would want to play the most, do that. And that, I think, is a pretty good rule of thumb.
Yeah, 100%.
When you're trying to figure out, oh, well, what, oh man, this could be played so many different ways.
Well, a great example is, so I worked with an actor yesterday, and she's a very strong young actor, and we did a take, and I was laughing. I mean, it's a comedic role, right? And it was laughing, and there was a couple moments we didn't love, right? Which is always that sort of thing. Yeah, firsthand, right?
Yeah.
It's like reading a book and being like, yeah, but page 42.
Right.
You're like, but it was 250 pages.
Again, you're like,
But
no one is gonna.
You focus on page 42. But anyway, so we did that. We did it again because there were some things, and then we watched it again. And as we watched the second one, I just didn't have the same sort of guttural reaction. We hit the things we wanted to hit, but it was like there was something missing that the first one had. And so I knew in my mind I liked the first take better. But of course, when I'm working with an actor, we're going to talk about it. And when all is said and done, it's their choice. But then I said to her, I go, well, what do you think? Well, this and that. I go, which one did you like? Which one was funnier, you think? I feel like the first one was funnier. I go, it was. It wasn't perfect, but nor is life.
Yeah.
We're not striving for perfection in life. We're striving for experience and fun and intrigue and curiosity and discovery and all of these components, right? And so I think there's something about embracing the imperfections and understanding that the perfect audition is not what we're striving for, but we're striving for memorable moments and an experience. It's not about a perfect experience, but it's about an experience. It's about you taking me on this journey with you, and if this one part of it wasn't exactly what you wanted, who cares? But I think that's a big part of it, not overanalyzing, right? And not taking all of those tools and feeling as though, okay, well, I got to do this or that and the next thing.
Yeah. And it's something I think about too. I don't know if this is a helpful thought, but I'm like, this wouldn't even be my coverage anyways. Like, this is going to be on the other person anyways. Don't worry. If this is the line, it's like, man, like, I don't know. We'll see on the day. It's not going to be on me anyways.
But that is a good point, though.
It
is good, I think, for you to think about that in terms of when I'm going to do this scene in the TV show or in the movie, like this part right here. So, like, let's say it's 3 minutes of you. The camera is never going to stay on you for 3 minutes unless you're Anne Hathaway singing "I Dreamed a Dream" in Les Mis. Right?
Which is
that's
all
an exception.
For,
which is pretty much all you audition for. Leads of like you and Anne Hathaway. I don't know if people know this.
That's true.
Right against each other.
Yeah. She's always stealing my roles.
I know.
I went out for that.
Yeah.
In my brain.
Yeah, in your brain.
I was 9.
Yeah.
That happened or whatever. Anyways.
But the point is, I think it is good to think about that sometimes. Like, hey, I'm going to do everything I can here. And it's and I don't look at that as a defeatist way of looking at it, like you're not doing enough. I look at it as a way of, hey, I'm going to kind of surrender to what's happening. I'm going to let go of control over all of it. And I'm also going to understand that I've done the work And, I remember hearing this about Floyd Mayweather where he was talking to someone and the guy said, aren't you nervous about the fight or whatever? You're just kind of hanging out, you're relaxing. He goes, look, I'm either ready or I'm not, but worrying about it ain't going to change a damn thing. And I think there's something good about that, right? It's like, I'm either ready or I'm not. I've done the work, right? In this moment, right here and right now, yeah, I can assess. I can be critical. But really, you're either ready or you're not,
And you probably are ready.
Yes. Well, or you're not.
Or you're not.
Yeah, but either way, trying to
Yeah.
to change that in the moment or trying to really figure that out in the moment, there isn't really much value.
Yeah, and for, people that are very seasoned in their craft, you have to remember that your worst audition is going to be really okay.
Right.
Like, even if you feel really, really not confident about it, you have that backbone and all of your things that are so in you to rely on. I think that's something I try to think about too is, if I'm like, oh, this scene isn't coming, like, like whatever to me, like this is difficult. But I know that from my training, if nothing else, if I just listen and I really try to have maybe one grounding thought of who my character is or who you are to me, I'll be okay. I'll be okay. I know that because I have the preparation and training to rely on that I think is super helpful to just like let it go and surrender sometimes. Or also knowing like it's so hard to tell yourself that it's okay. Like if you turn in an audition that you're not super proud of, just to be like, it's okay. This is not going to be the end of the world. It's okay because everything, it feels like, oh, I book it or I don't, because that's true. That a lot of times there feels like there's a lot of weight on every audition sometimes.
Yeah, totally. So let's see. I'm curious, what for you is one of the bigger challenges you think that you've faced, whether that be as an actor, just in life. What is one of the biggest challenges that you faced, and how did you deal with that as an individual, as a human being, as a creative, what have you?
I would say kind of a challenge that seems like something that'll kind of just be my experience for a while is I think when I was younger, a lot of people would tell me things about who I was that I kind of claimed as my identity. Like if someone said, you're always smiling, or you're so happy all the time, you're so positive, that those were true. But then when it seemed like that wasn't happening, that I didn't know who I was. If I wasn't these things that everyone admires so much about me, then what am I? And I think sometimes I still feel that a lot. And again, when I say that, I think that's just going to be my experience is I'm changing and I know that's good. But I also, I always still want to be nice. And I'm worried if people don't think I'm nice. And the older I get, I want people to see everything that I want them to see about me. Like, I want them to notice all the things that I like about myself. And that leads into so much. I replay so many conversations and try to think about how they perceived me in that conversation. So I don't exactly know how to combat that yet. I think one thing is that if I'm thinking that, I'm sure everyone is thinking that, and that people probably don't have time to think about me as much as I vainly probably they're thinking about our conversation. No, they're not. No, they're not. I think reminding myself not that important, and they're not thinking about me as much as I maybe worry they are. And also giving myself grace throughout all of it, and knowing that I am just changing and growing, and that is normal, and that's okay. And the amount of people I've talked to that are older than I am, of like, oh my gosh, yeah, like, you're in your 20s? Like, that's how it's going to be your entire 20s. I'm like, oh, good. Oh, good. Because when I was younger, it just was like, yeah, this is who I am, and this is great. Like, kind of blissfully ignorant about everything. And then just experiencing things, and on top of that, getting older, it seems like a lot sometimes, especially because I'm someone who talks a lot. Then sometimes I'm like, well, if I'm worried about how people are going to perceive what I say, like, maybe I just shouldn't talk as much. Or like that would combat me then replaying the conversations. And I'm so concerned of, did I ask them enough questions about themselves? Are they going to think I was selfish? Did I, like, oh shoot, did I remember that their birth, like all of these things that I want to be good. And I remember watching Taylor Swift's documentary, and she talked about that. She was like, I've always just wanted to be good and nice. And I feel that, but then it bleeds into so much people pleasing. Because it's like, well, how can I authentically be myself if I'm worried about who that is?
Yeah. I get it firsthand. Yeah. I mean, I think as somebody who always has felt as though it's my job to keep others happy, and because it's fascinating. I'm a big proponent of looking back into our childhoods and seeing what were some of these sort of core principles, these core values, or these core concepts that we established at a young age and then have sort of perpetuated throughout our lives. But I think about my mom, and she always just said, you can do anything, right? You can do anything. She would say, you're the golden boy, right? Which, is
good. And
then
I'm
also
sure,
like, yeah, well, that means, well, if I'm not doing then I've failed, right?
Yeah.
But then I also had a dad who consistently would say, oh, well, this could be better. Right?
Wow, what a combination.
It's a fascinating combination, right?
Yeah.
So it's like always wanting to do everything that's going to please everyone while simultaneously feeling as though it could have been better than it was. So the good news there is I have now dedicated my life, really, in terms of my work, to helping others become the best version of who they are, and doing everything I can to help them be happy, but simultaneously always feeling like there's something more I could do and never being totally satisfied. And so I think it's a blessing and a curse. But I think what you said is so important. It was very funny too. I didn't know for sure, but if somebody said, what is she going to say next? I would have put a lot of money on what you were going to say, just how you said it, because you just kind of took a breath and just went, just giving yourself grace.
Yeah, your face, you're like, ah.
Yeah. But in that moment, but I do think it's so important, because life throws us some crazy stuff, as you know. Life throws us some crazy stuff, and we can be very hard on ourselves, and we can question a lot of things in life. But I think you're a testament to someone who has overcome a lot of adversity, personally. You are someone who is, you are second to none in terms of the drive and dedication and passion that you've put into this. And I mean that with my whole heart. And I've worked with some amazing actors, but I've been able to see the work you put in. And, you talk about that preparation and that toolbox of techniques. And it is vast because you really care about this. And I think for me, what makes you who you are, though, is your heart. And it's not about just pleasing other people, but it's about being the authentic version of who you are. Being the Cece Kelly who you really are. And I think that as you learn how to embrace that that's the real gift that you're going to give. And I do believe you are, like the way you were saying it earlier, you're like, this is going to happen. I do believe it's going to happen, but I think it already is happening. And I think that, it's like my friend David Alt would say, we're all just at the movie theater in different places, but we're all going to end up watching the movie.
Yeah.
You might be in the line. I might be at popcorn. Somebody else might be there early. They're sitting, in their seat. We're all just kind of on the journey. But what I can say is, as somebody who has spent a lot of time with you, you are a very special individual. And I'm just excited for more people to learn about it. So,
Aww.
yeah. So there you go.
Thanks, Eric.
Yeah. There we go.
Thank you for having me. This was so fun.
Yeah.
I've been waiting for you to do a podcast. I'm worried about that mic.
Oh, yeah. There we go. Thank you so much for joining us on the Unseen Work. We really appreciate you taking the time to be with us today. If you want to learn a little bit more about the Unseen Work, follow us on Instagram at The Unseen Work, and that is UNSCEN.